Jezebel is a figure mentioned in the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament. She is primarily featured in the books of Kings, which describe the history of the Israelite monarchy. In the biblical narrative, she was a queen in Israel, known for promoting idolatry, and is often portrayed negatively. As a result, the name is sometimes used metaphorically to describe a seductive or manipulative woman. Jezebel was the daughter of a Phoenician king named Baal, and so this made her a princess. She then got married to Ahab, the seventh king of Israel, and this made her a queen. Now, she came from a background that did not follow the God of Israel. She was a worshipper of the Canaanite god of rain and fertility, Baal. She was a woman who was influential, powerful, and wicked. After marrying King Ahab of Israel, Jezebel actively promoted the worship of Baal, the Canaanite god, in the northern kingdom of Israel. This involved constructing temples, altars, and promoting rituals. The first mention of Jezebel occurs in the context of her marriage to Ahab in 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 31. Now Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord, more than all who were before him. And as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took for his wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. The story starts by saying that Ahab, who was the son of Omri and the king of Israel, did things that were very wrong in the eyes of God. In fact, he did even worse things than any king before him. This shows how far Ahab had strayed from the good ways of the kings who ruled before him. The story goes on to say that Ahab's actions are connected to his marriage to Jezebel. This marriage is seen as a big reason why Ahab turned away from worshipping Yahweh, the God of Israel. The passage also mentions that Ahab went on to serve Baal and worship him. Baal was a significant god in the beliefs of Canaanites and Phoenicians. Ahab's marriage to Jezebel, who was a strong believer in Baal, played a big part in bringing the worship of Baal into Israel and making it more common. This part of the story sets everything up for what happens next. It shows how Jezebel's influence on Ahab led to problems. There were conflicts with the prophets who followed Yahweh, especially Elijah, as they tried to stop the spreading worship of idols and Baal in the kingdom of Israel. Queen Jezebel caused a lot of trouble by telling people to worship Baal instead of Yahweh, the God of the Israelites. This led to significant conflicts, including the well-known confrontation on Mount Carmel. On Mount Carmel, something very important happened. As written in 1 Kings 18, Elijah had a contest with the prophets of Baal to find out who the real God was. They each prepared sacrifices, and the God who sent fire to burn the sacrifice would be considered the true God. Even though the prophets of Baal tried really hard, even cutting themselves in a special ritualistic way, their God didn't respond. But when Elijah prayed to Yahweh, the God of Israel, fire came down from the sky and burned up the sacrifice. This showed that Yahweh was the powerful and true God. The event played a crucial role in demonstrating the supremacy of the true God of Israel and challenging the influence of Baal worship. But on other end, Jezebel's continued opposition to the worship of Yahweh and her involvement in the events surrounding Naboth's vineyard eventually led to her downfall. After Elijah showed that Yahweh was more powerful than the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, Jezebel got really angry. She sent a message to Elijah, saying she would kill him the next day. Because of this threat, Elijah had to run away to save his life. 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 4, describes how Jezebel sought to cut off the prophets of Yahweh. In response, a righteous man named Obadiah, who was part of King Ahab's court, took 100 prophets, hid them in caves, and made sure they had food, so that Jezebel couldn't harm them. Another significant event involving Jezebel is the story of Naboth's vineyard, 1 Kings 21. King Ahab wanted to acquire a vineyard that belonged to a man named Naboth. The vineyard was close to the palace. Naboth, however, refused to sell it, stating that it was his family inheritance, and selling it would go against the Israelite law regarding ancestral property. But when Jezebel found out that Ahab was upset about not getting Naboth's vineyard, she came up with an unethical plan. She got false witnesses to accuse Naboth of saying bad things about God and the king. Because of these false accusations, Naboth was wrongly declared guilty, and as a punishment, people threw stones at him until he died. After getting rid of Naboth, Jezebel informed Ahab that he could now have the vineyard. Ahab didn't know about the unethical plan and happily took over the vineyard, thinking it was rightfully his. This event further illustrates the corrupt and morally compromised nature of Ahab and Jezebel's rule. It's also the background for the prophet Elijah telling Ahab and Jezebel that they did something very wrong and God will punish them and their family for it. Because of her actions and influence against the worship of Yahweh, the prophet Elijah delivered a prophecy of doom upon Jezebel, predicting a gruesome end for her. 1 Kings chapter 21, verse 23. And concerning Jezebel, the Lord also said, "The dogs shall eat Jezebel within the walls of Jezreel." This prophecy is eventually fulfilled later in the biblical narrative. The prophecy about Jezebel's fate was really bad, saying something tragic would happen to her. It mentioned that she would be eaten by dogs in the city of Jezreel. This showed how serious God's punishment would be. As the story goes on, we see this prophecy come true. The fulfillment of the prophecy regarding Jezebel's demise is recorded in the Bible in 2 Kings chapter 9, verses 30 to 37, and it is indeed a very dramatic and tragic episode. Jehu, who was a commander in the Israelite army, was chosen by the prophet Elisha to be the new king of Israel. Part of his job was to bring punishment to the family of Ahab, and that included dealing with Jezebel. When Jehu arrived at Jezreel, Jezebel dressed up and stood by a window. But instead of being quiet, she teased Jehu, the general who had just defeated and killed her son. In response to Jezebel's tease, Jehu ordered her eunuchs to throw her out of the window. Jezebel was thrown from the window, and her blood splashed on the wall and horses, and then the horses walked over her. This act was a form of judgment and punishment for her actions and influence, particularly her promotion of idolatry and persecution of the followers of Yahweh. Later, when Jehu wanted to give her a proper burial as a king's daughter, they found that dogs had eaten most of her body. This grim discovery matched what Elijah had predicted earlier, showing the severe judgment of God on Jezebel. The story of Jezebel's downfall is a strong part of the Bible. It shows what happens when someone goes against the God of Israel. It's a vivid and tragic portrayal of divine judgment. It also marks a turning point in the political and religious landscape of the kingdom during that period. Thus, in conclusion, Jezebel was once a queen in Israel, but over time, she became a symbol of a tricky and unethical woman in stories and everyday life. The biblical narrative portrays her as a powerful and influential queen whose actions had significant consequences for the Israelite kingdom, contributing to her negative image.